Welcome to the March 2026 Lunch and Learn. You may in the background be hearing some lightning and some storms taking place over here, but you know what? We're going to make it through regardless. I can't believe that we're already in March. We're only a couple of weeks away from spring break, and by the time that happens, the year is almost over. And I know it seems like I'm rushing everything, but it does point out we are living in some fast times. As many changes we are seeing in our industry, it seems like things are really going fast. Today, we're going to kind of take a step back and pay attention to the uh, days of installing furnaces in hall closets. That used to happen all the time. And making sure that we address the subject correctly with code, we've got Don Brennan, who is the state mechanical inspector for Central Arkansas, as our guest expert on all things furnaces and hall closets. Hey, Don, welcome to the Lunch and Learn.
Hey Tom, how are you doing?
It's a wonderful day in the neighborhood. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
All right. Don, here's the first question. I know, we all know that we are governed by the International Mechanical Code, but lately I'm hearing all these references to other codes, including the NFPA. Why is that?
Well, NFP and code is trying to get more in line with the NFPs, to my understanding. NFP's been around for a long time. It's National Fire Protect, so they're just trying to get the wording and everything more in alignment. And a lot of our codes are standards, reference the NFPAs. So once,
Okay, so it's regardless, we are going to have to be able to get along with all these code authorities, and like you say, they're trying to, I don't know, make them fit together well. One of the things that I wanted to cover here, just really quickly, is that read through the code and it talks about category 1 and class 1 and class A and high, medium, and low heat. And I wanted to bring out here that when folks are looking in code, if they're looking at how code applies to us residentially, we're talking about low heat appliances, not greater than 1,000 degrees Fahrenheit, right?
right, and that's about as easy as you can get it right there. Residential is low heat.
All right. All right. Tell me about plenums.
Plenum's a box or a cavity used to converge air together and then direct it to another place,
Well,
whether it be
the reason
ductworks
I
or
wanted
whatever.
us to look at this slide is because a lot of times at some of the codes we look at, it keeps referencing supply, supply, supply. But in the commentary and in this section on plenum, it's letting us know that when it says plenum, you can be talking supply, you can be talking return.
It's on both sides.
Now, that brings up this important issue about duct materials. Why don't you jump in here and talk about it?
Okay, so duct material, and we're talking about duct. On residential, it's been exempted to stay at 30 gauge duct work. However, in keeping with the 3-foot clearance from the ignition source, you may need a short piece of 28 gauge before you can change over.
Okay, so I'm having a joyous time over here. I don't know if it's the weather or my equipment. The only thing I'm seeing right now is you, sir. Uh, we'll try to see if we can move on in spite of the problems that we're having. One of the things that this particular slide got into and said was that it talked about the different kinds of sheetrock, and what I'm thinking in terms of is how you finish out the inside of the return air. Talk about that, please.
Okay, so it's supposed to be non-combustible material, and duct liner is supposed to meet ASTM E84 and ASTM C411,
Okay.
and that's where we get to the need of the Type X sheetrock in that return to meet the non-combustible, and it the X meets the C411 and the E84 requirements through ASTM. And your standard sheetrock is actually listed as a combustible, actually limited combustion material. And well, since it's not listed as non-combustible, limited and combustible are basically the same thing as far as code requirement.
Don, let me kind of do a technical thing here. What are you seeing on your screen?
I see me and you,
Okay, all right.
and one of us looks good. I'm not sure about the other one.
Folks, I'm sorry that you have to look at somebody that looks like Don and me right now, but we're having some problems here. So what we will do is just try to visit with you without the benefit of slides of some of the things that we wanted to cover. Now, Don, on that reference there where it talked about what's X sheetrock, what is that?
Type X.
Yes, sir.
Hell, I'm not a sheetrock expert myself, but it is a different composition, and it has been tested and listed and labeled as Type X, and it is listed as non-combustible.
Yeah, I think there's a Type X and a Type C, but I don't know anybody ever goes quite the route of C unless an engineer is getting involved. But the reason I wanted to take a minute here is that for some people who may be thinking about how are they going to seal up that return air cavity, that again, I'm thinking in terms you got a furnace, you got a platform, and below it, you got this cavity, which is return air, and then maybe a filter grill right there coming into the hall. And they need to seal that up now. Because, in the past, we didn't worry about it. You could just see studs and sometimes the bathtub on the other side.
Right.
But now we know you got to seal it up. But I noticed there in the code it said that standard sheetrock was not acceptable for that. It had to be a Type X. Am I getting that right?
You are. The standard sheetrock is listed. It's a non-limited combustion material, and it's really supposed to be, duct liner, because that would be considered a duct as a plenum.
I see.
No more open 2x4 construction in the return checks. So we had to go in there and start lining them and sealing them. So once we start lining and sealing, we had to start meeting the requirements for duct liner.
Yeah. Okay, let me ask you this. If we're going to seal them, we're going to have to use not just standard sheetrock, we're going to have to use the X or better. Is that right?
Yes, supposed to be Type X, sir.
Okay.
According to NFP 90B, which is referenced in the furnace installation manuals.
Now, I've always been of the opinion, and that's why I'm asking now, can we use duct liner inside that return as long as we have the foil facing to the inside? And I said that wrong. I'm sorry. I mean,
you're talking about duct board?
Duct board, yes, sir.
Duct board, yes. Now, there's caveats to all of this. There's never just a cookie cutter answer, unfortunately. So if it's just a through the wall filter, then duct board is an allowable material there. It meets the requirements.
Well, I know when I was looking it up, it said some places they call it a Type O and some places they call it a Type 1 fire retardant or fire resistant. I'm not sure which phrase they use. And the reason I'm saying this is I'm thinking in terms of retrofit. You got all these guys are going to be going out there changing out furnaces, and they're going to want to put them in the same hall closet that the old one was in, and that return air was never sealed. Man, sealing that up with sheetrock could be a real pain, but duct board would have some flexibility to it. What do you think?
Yes, duct board would be good, and especially if we're dealing with a closet that's on a garage wall. It's not completely surrounded by conditioned space. Sheetrock can absorb moisture, so we wouldn't want to use it in that on that one. But duct board would work, especially with a through the wall penetration. Now, if that duct goes down through the floor and carries over and comes back up through the floor somewhere else in the house to pick up filter grill, then that one would need to be lined with the sheet metal.
I got you.
That's why I'm saying there's caveats to all of it. There's never just one good, easy cookie cutter answer, unfortunately.
Okay, one of the big questions that I hear is that you got to put a furnace in an existing closet. It's got to have a certain amount of free space on either side of it for, in essence, for it to be able to breathe and have circulation. What's the minimum distance between the furnace and what would be like the finished area or sheetrock of the furnace closet?
Okay, so code prescribes a 1 inch bare minimum, and then it's referenced per manufacturer's installation instructions and listings of the appliances. So, 1 inch bare minimum by code, but if you have a appliance that's listed for 0 clearance, then you can install it to 0 clearance.
Okay. Now let's talk about the bottom of it, because that's a real issue. That old furnace has been sitting on that same platform for 15, 20 years, and it's overflowed some from the condensate, and it's just in bad shape. What do they do?
Of course, they should rebuild the platform,
Yeah,
at least replace the rotten wood, and it 26 gauge metal between the furnace base and the wood, turned down through the lip of that, across the lip of that wood also. 26 gauge is where sheet metal becomes certified test non-combustible.
Okay. So now the plywood. Let's say they're going to take the old piece out and they're going to put a piece of new plywood in. Can that 3/4 plywood then that's covered with the metal, is that okay?
That is okay.
And what gauge did you say on the metal?
26.
26.
And that would also have to turn down through to the 3/4 edge that they cut out to cover that.
So it's got to cover what would be the outside edge, in essence, or the edge between
Yeah,
the.
typically referred to it as the throat.
Okay. Okay. Huh. All right. I don't know how many systems I've seen where the supply plenum, when they changed it out, was quite a bit bigger than the top of the new furnace, and they just leave the backside of it open. What do you tell people to do?
That does a real good job for heating up that closet.
It does, doesn't it?
But manufacturer's installation instructions pretty well covers that one. So that plenum should probably been replaced with one to fit the furnace.
Well, okay.
If it's real, if it's too big, or you just talking about they just can't get in there to seal it up.
Well, I'm thinking really both of them. I'm thinking the plenum's too big, and I'm wondering, do they have to build a transition where there's a nice, angle on it, or can they just blank off the back part of that old plenum as long as it's sealed good?
A transition would be the appropriate method.
Okay.
There minimal blankings allowed anymore. Some furnaces will allow 1 to 2 inch blank off in their ISOs. When we get out there, there's first thing we do is grab the manufacturer's installation manual, and we peruse through it too to make sure that it's installed to its listing. So if they allow some of it, we kind of go with what they say. If they say, if it's a 4-inch hole and they only allow a 2-inch blank plate, well, that would require a transition.
I got you. Well, it's not just to throw it in the closet, slam it, and go on down the road anymore.
No, and it probably never should have been.
That's true. Okay, well, when we look at this, and let's look at another item or two. I got a real good conversation the other day with somebody that was upset because they had to put in a sediment trap. Do you have to put in a sediment trap on an old installation where you're doing a retrofit and it never did have a sediment trap? Do you have to put one in?
Yes, because even though it's a retrofit, uh, it's a new furnace, it's a new install. So look at it like new work.
Hmm.
So, and field gas code does require sediment trap on fuel supply lines, and almost all the ISOs I've been reading lately, the furnace manufacturers are requiring sediment traps in their installation manuals, and
Since we're
several of them
talking
are.
retrofit, go ahead.
I was going to say several manufacturers are even saying, what size they want the drop leg on the sediment trap, and how long, but it should be installed as close to the furnace inlet as possible on the back side of the service shutoff.
Okay, we're talking retrofit. They're going to put in a new furnace, going to have an evaporator coil. What about the condensate line? Do they have to run new condensate line? Is there any difference with it being a retrofit with what you have to do on the primary and the secondary condensate?
Depending on the age of what they're changing out, most of the material that's been used is still allowed to be used. If they're going to reuse the drain, it does need to be reconditioned and make sure that it's clean and not leaking. Reuse of old material should be conditioned like new and approved. So they do have to have, well, there's 4 different things we can do with drains. You can pipe out the primary and the secondary. You can do a primary with a a water monitor switch at the secondary outlet. They can do a primary with a auxiliary pan, with a drain out of the auxiliary pan, or they can do a primary to an auxiliary pan with a water monitor switch in the auxiliary pan, or any combination thereof the above. Those are the minimum requirements.
Let me go to the attic just a minute and, and think in terms of that condensate line and the secondary condensate line.
Uh-huh.
I guess if it's a retrofit, the secondary line was probably never labeled as being secondary, and where it terminates outside probably doesn't have the green tape or the green notification on it. Are they going to need to do that? Make sure that it's obvious that it's a secondary?
Yes, it will need to be identified as primary drain termination.
Hmm. Hmm. Nothing simple, Don. Nothing simple.
Nothing is, well, if it was easy, everybody'd do it.
Anyway, Don, man, I appreciate your time today. Thank you for stepping in and taking this. And I am so sorry. I don't know what our problem is technically that we just have one whole screen that we're just black. And that's why we don't have the slides that we would normally have had. You've done a great job of stepping in and being able to pull right off the top of your head the answers to the questions that we ask. Hope you'll come back again sometime and we'll try to do a better job for you next time.
Well, I'm going to call it the luck of the Irish. And appreciate your time, Tom.
Appreciate you, and guys, I appreciate y'all tuning in today. And it's a great topic. I hope you learned something from it, even though we didn't have the backup slide to kind of drive it home. So until next time, thank you very much. We'll talk to you again in April. Oh my, just around the corner. Thank y'all. Bye now.